Annabelle wrote a book of her experiences with her autistic daughter, Georgie.
When she was a month old and hadn't smiled or held my finger or snuggled in any way, you know, there was just no relationship possible with this baby because there was nothing coming back from her.
Within all the difficulties of autism, there was one doctor who understood the key role of auditory problems.
Dr. Guy Berard, age 77, a specialist who has spent his entire life and career in France. He too had fought his own battle with hearing disorders. A fellow doctor once diagnosed him with progressive deafness.
Ask him, what should I do? He told me nothing. You are half deaf. In 5 years, you will be completely deaf, and that's all. No treatment, no treatment.
Refusing to accept that there was no treatment, Dr. Berard decided to treat himself with a set of headphones and music.
Low frequency, high frequency, low frequency, high frequency.
He found that by modulating the frequency, he could exercise the entire auditory system, effectively retraining how a patient hears.
This is the normal hearing. This is an abnormal hearing. A perfect graphic is a straight line. The straight line means that you can hear all the sound with the same intensity if I send you this sound on the same intensity.
Dr. Berard pointed out that audiologists who only test every second frequency tend to miss the distortions that are visible taken the hearing as a whole.
He succeeded in preventing his own deafness from going further and began to explore how his auditory training could be used to help others.
One of the very first people that he decided to try this on was his own daughter, because she'd been severely learning disabled and dyslexic. She was able to speak, etc., but if you told her things, she would just, she didn't seem to understand the names. He suddenly began to realize, you know, I wonder if there's anything wrong with the way she hears. We sat her down and gave her an audiogram, and he found out that, in fact, her hearing was severely distorted in several frequencies. As he says, it almost made him cry, because for years he'd been disciplining her, spanking her because she wasn't listening. He gave her the full treatment that he'd given himself, playing music, filtering out certain frequencies and modulating the music. And she got better and better and better, and now she's, I mean, he said within a very short time, she was functioning absolutely normally. This was such perfect proof to him, because this was someone so close to him, that in fact what everybody had thought was learning disabilities or just inability to pay attention or lack of will to pay attention was in fact something that was completely a physical problem, hearing distortions.
One problem Dr. Berard discovered was the tendency for an audiologist not to realize when a patient's hearing was hyperacute due to what appeared to be a terrific audiogram.
We went to a good audiologist in New York City who gave Georgie an audiogram, and we watched her face, and she went like that at many frequencies. You could tell they were really bothering her. And at the end, the audiologist looked at us and said, "Your child has perfect hearing. Any opera singer would love to have such fine hearing." Well, that was exactly what was driving that child into autism, because sound was so awful to her. The world was an intensely difficult place. Everything was too loud.
Painful hearing, no matter what the cause, has emotional as well as physical repercussions. As a result, some people, especially children, learn how to block their hearing.
At the moment, you had a painful hearing. As you were afraid by this painful hearing, you have blocked completely your ossicle, you have blocked your hearing. You are afraid that something could be painful, you blocked. When you could not do that, it was blocked into your ear.
Imagine hearing so well that common sounds are unbearable. Voices, everyday noise. The world could easily be a terrifying place. causing you to withdraw, paralyzed with fear. Dr. Bernard Rimland is the country's foremost expert on autism.
The audiogram of a person who has hypersensitive hearing looks like a mountain range, and there's a lot of high peaks. And if a person has a high peak at a certain point in his hearing, any noise at that sound frequency will be very painful to that person.
Although Dr. Berard had already written in France about these auditory problems, it was only when Annabel Staley's book about Georgie and her experiences of auditory training became an international bestseller that this concept became widely known.
Diana Stelly Thomas.
I remember going on a trip once. It was a 3-hour drive up to the country, and there was this one girl sitting next to me, and I was sitting in the middle, and she was having a conversation with people in the car, and I could not, her voice was driving me crazy. I just wound up crawling up and going into a corner and covering my ears.
And another thing she couldn't do was blow out candles on a birthday cake. She couldn't stand any kind of blowing sound.
I remember being afraid of the ocean, not being able to go anywhere near it because it sounded like a tidal wave. And I remember people's voices bothering me so much that I didn't feel like I could get near them without wanting to scream.
What is clear, however, is that young Georgie came out of her autistic shell after just 1 week with this man.
Annecy, a village in the French Alps. Here, Dr. Guy Berard developed auditory training to remedy his own loss of hearing. He later used it to successfully treat dyslexia. When Georgie Stelly was brought over from America, he attempted to treat her autism, and it worked. We brought Georgie back to Annecy for their first meeting since Dr. Berard treated her as a child.
Do you remember the treatment you had here?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, I do.
With the bad music?
Georgie had been diagnosed severely autistic with no chance of recovery. Once withdrawn, unreachable in her own private world, she is now able to provide a unique view into the world of the autistic.
I never even really communicated about my fear of certain sounds because I thought everybody else heard the same way and that I wasn't handling it as well.
Annabel Stelly, Georgie's mother, saw a remarkable change come over her daughter.
It was 6 o'clock at night, the second day after her auditory training sessions had ended, which had taken 10 days. And Georgie said, "May I go out and play?" And my husband and I looked at her and looked at each other and said, "What do you want to do that for? It's dark and it's raining and supper's almost ready." And she said, "Because the rain doesn't sound like a machine gun anymore."
I was almost ashamed that I'd let something like that get in the way, but I couldn't help it. I mean, I couldn't understand why it scared me so much.
And rain had sounded like a machine gun to her.
And we let her go out, and she danced all around the courtyard with her arms stretched out.
You hear something?
Yes. Yes.
Berard is testing Georgie's hearing again to see if the treatment done 15 years ago has permanently changed her hearing patterns.
Your hearing is perfect. 99% perfect on both ears.
I have a chance to really do something with my life, to make friends, go to school, and just have fun, you know, which is what I'd been wanting to do all along. So I just felt like I was getting my reward. For the first time in my life, I wanted to get to know other people. I wanted to know more about the world. I became much more sociable. I wanted to make friends.
I remember her first birthday party after auditory training when she was 12, and what a pleasure it was to bring in a cake loaded with candles and have Georgie blow them all out, happily.
Today, Georgie Stelly is still challenged by some symptoms of autism, but she's married, lives in Oregon, and graduated from college with academic honors. Georgie credits Dr. Berard's treatment with alleviating the hypersensitivity to noise that made her withdraw from so much.
To me, he's a hero, and I love the guy. I think he's great. I think he's a genius.
The potential for this treatment is vast, and we hope to see it spread into every school system, every mental hospital, everywhere where people are suffering from these diseases or these disorders for which there really has been no solution up till now. Nobody's known what to do in many cases. We believe this could perhaps lower number of people in special ed by a very high percentage in years to come.
No one knows exactly how auditory integration training works, or why its results seem to be permanent. The work is only beginning, and the research is still in its infancy. But there's no questioning the results.
In his lifetime, Dr. Berard trained many practitioners from all around the world in his method. He also appointed practitioner trainers to carry on the training and to ensure that children in difficulty would continue to receive this help.